Hello, viewers. Welcome to Biblical Hot Topics. Today, our topic is entitled How to Start a Spiritual Journey. And I will go a little beyond that. But one of the first things I would like to say about starting your spiritual journey, you have to come clean. You got to let go of a lot of the secrets. You have to be transparent to the Most High God and to your spiritual team. It's time out for a lot of the lies and stuff that we do, hide and throw the rock and hide our hand, all that kind of stuff, okay? That's the first thing I have to say. You got to take the mask off, okay? Now, on this podcast today, I will give some insight into my own spiritual journey. I started out as a born again Christian, and that's a long story because I was a Christian for close to 100 years, okay? And then I just felt like there was more to this spiritual thing than what I was learning in the Christian church. So I began to ask God. That's all I knew how to do was you pray and you ask God. I began to ask God, how could I learn more? How could I learn more? I went to different churches, and the pastors used to actually get angry with me because, they was angry with me because I didn't fall in line with everybody else that was in the church. If they was teaching a particular subject, then they thought I should just fall in line and learn that subject. But it was always something pulling on my heart that was telling me that it was more to it than what I was learning in the Sunday classes. And I used to go to the Wednesday classes as well. Okay. So my actual spiritual journey started when I had a relative, a family member, that had become sick. And this person was sick unto death, y'all. And but I never got a lot of time to spend with this person. So when it was brought to my attention that he was sick and that he only had so long to live, I had him come to my house. And I knew he had a lot of karma. He had done a lot of things to me and other members of the family. And I prayed. And I asked God to let me heal him so that we can get a chance to be family. And so that's just what happened. He came in my house, and when he left out of my house, it was like, he walked out strong. He walked in weak and he walked out strong. And I really don't even remember him saying thank you. But the thing was that he had gotten well enough that he could leave. I don't think he was totally healed, but he wasn't sick unto death anymore. Okay? So make a long story short, and I did another video on this. I don't remember the name of that video right now because I've done several videos, okay? But when he left out of my house, he left a evil spiritual presence in my house. So things was going on in my house that had never, gone on before. Noises, visions. I could sometimes, I was seeing him when he wasn't there. That was during the time that he was with me. And so now he had moved out of my life, and so all this stuff was still going on. And so When he left, I cleaned the house up real good. I cleaned the house up real good. I cleaned the floors. I washed the walls. And I had gone onto YouTube. Excuse me. And they said on there, they said put salt, sea salt in each corner. I put the sea salt in each corners. I saged the house. And then whatever kind of spirit this was, it was strong, okay? So even after I did all of that, it was like maybe a day or two later, and the sounds and stuff was back, all the stuff was back. So I didn't clean the whole house in one day. I took out about a few days, maybe a week, to clean the house. So the next day when I was down, I was downstairs in my house, and I was cleaning the house. And the Most High God said to me, he said, put up an altar. I said, put up an altar? Now, keep in mind, you all, I came from the Christian church, and so putting up an altar meant evil spirits gonna come in, you ain't gonna be able to get them out, all that stuff they say. If you mess with the spirits, you might get the wrong ones in, they scare you, they want to scare you on everything, okay? So as soon as the Most High God told me put altar up, I went and got the, I went to Google, and I Googled the purpose of an altar and how to set an altar up. So I set the altar up, and it was beautiful. It was beautiful. I put flowers on it, and that was part of my, the one, you have to put all the 4 elements on there. So the flowers was one of the elements that I had put on my altar. And so I got done cleaning up the house, and I went to lay down in the bed. And I could hear a little cracking and popping still that I hadn't heard, before this person came to my house. So now I had put the altar up, right? I laid down. Like I said, I was still hearing some of the noises, and the negative spirit came into my mind and said to me, go take that altar down. Now keep in mind, God told me to put it up. I know God told me to put it up. But then, you always got that negative energy that's on the other side that has a voice too. A voice where it could speak through you, or talk to you. And so I got up and I said, well, you know what? I don't know anything about. Let me go take this altar down because I'm not for sure about what to do. So I went downstairs in my house, and I took the altar down. I took all the stuff off the altar and everything. Left it just plain, without any items on it. And then I went back upstairs and I laid down. I said, now God, I'm a bit confused here. I don't know what to do because I don't know how to set up an altar. I don't know anything about an altar. So then God told me again, he said, go set the altar up. So I got back up. It was about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. I got back up, and I went back downstairs in my house, and I set the altar back up. I set it back up, and this time I went and grabbed a picture, because see, now this time I knew for sure that the Most High God was telling me to set that altar up. So I grabbed a picture of some relatives, deceased relatives, and I went and put it on the altar, because I had heard over the years that the altar is for you put people on there that's deceased on there. Okay. At that time I didn't know it was different types of altars. So I put the picture on the altar, and the Most High God told me to take the picture off. So I took the picture off. And then the Most High God said to me, the reason you have to take the picture off is because I know you love them. But the way they felt about you in the 4D or whatever, now I'm paraphrasing, this is not his exact words. He said, but the way they cared about you then, that's how they feel about you now. And that's why you had to take the picture off. So I took the picture off. And then I was I went back upstairs. Now it's after 2 o'clock in the morning or more or later. And I laid down and I said to God, I said, I don't know nothing about no altar. And I don't want to be calling in the wrong spirits, because now I'm programmed and, from the Christian church. And so, anything that you do that has anything to do with an altar or anything outside of what the pastor tells you to do, they put fear into you about doing stuff like that. So I laid down. And then all of a sudden I turned over and I saw that my cell phone had lit up. Something had came through on my cell phone. Viewers, on my cell phone was a document. And the document was about the Israelites. And it was about their history and how they worshiped their ancestors and how they had altars and stuff like that. And I was like, I tell you no lie. I did not put this in the phone. I did not put it in the phone. I rolled over because, I was constantly thinking what I should have done about the altar. And there it was. So I looked at it. I don't remember the exact title, but it says something about the ancestors and how we used to do things. So that was my whole purpose for wanting to dig deeper into my spiritual journey. I want to know the history of my people and, the things that we did before we came here. What was our culture? And so I got up out the bed again, ran down the stairs, and I printed out the document. The document was about 3 or 4 pages long. And I went back up and I read the document, and it talked about, how we always put up altars, how it was God's will for us to put up altars. Every time the Most High God had done things for us, he commanded that we put up altars for him, or he would suggest it or whatever. And so then now I felt good about having the altar up. So then the next day I came down to the altar, and I just prayed. That's all I did was pray. I know prayer is a form of meditation, but I wasn't really into meditating a lot. So I just prayed and I told God, I said, I don't know what I'm doing here. I said, but you told me to put this altar up, so I know it's the right thing to do. And I said, well, now would you teach me? And I didn't get an answer. But what I did was every day, all day long, every day, all day long, I've always prayed. So, but every day, all day long, now I would go to the altar to pray. And I started noticing things about the altar. One of the things I noticed was I had put flowers up on the altar. Now, I don't know the name of these flowers, but it was just I made up my own little bouquet of flowers and mixture of flowers and the green branches that go in with the flowers. And I noticed that now I had the altar up for several days and the flowers was not withering. You know how you have flowers, you go to the store, or I had gone out into my yard to get some of the flowers. Some I got from the store. But the flowers did not die. The flowers didn't die. And so that gave me heads up to just keep doing the things that I was doing. So I came to the altar every day, all night. Sometimes I wouldn't go to bed till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm at the altar. And then I remember hearing on the social media, a lot of people was talking about being a better version of yourself. And I said, well, that's what I want to do. I want to be a better version of myself. And so then my inter, you'll find that once you start your spiritual journey, a lot of the questions that you're asking, they're within you. So the answer came out of me. Just keep doing what you're doing, and to be a better version of yourself. And it also said to me, in order for this altar to work for you in totality, you have to have a relationship with this altar. Blew my socks off. I said, I got to have a relationship with it. So then I was actually forming a relationship with the altar, because I was at the altar all day long, every day. I'll stop and eat dinner or whatever. Go out to the store, do things that I had to do, and then I was right back at the altar. So I was actually forming a relationship, and that's the reason why the flowers didn't die for 3 months. Those flowers stayed on there. I took a picture of the flowers. I took a picture. I got my phone in use right now, y'all, with the music, so I can't show it to you. But you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna do another video and show you everything that I'm talking about. Okay. So, like I said, I read that document about the ancestors, and then I realized that an altar should be for a single purpose. So the altar that I had it up because I read that ancestor document, and it was my intention to put it up for Yahuwah, the Most High God. That's what my intention to put it up was for. So what I did was I put up another altar. So I put up the next altar, and this altar was for the ancestors. So I dressed it up, real pretty and everything. And so now I had 2 altars. And so now the spirit that was within me said to me, you have to get a relationship. I said, well, I don't know. I don't know any ancestors. I'm the black sheep of my family, so I don't do a lot of talking to my family. And I don't know where to start with this. And so I put it up, and I just started praying, and my prayers was like, dear ancestors, known and unknown, I don't know you, but the Most High God has prompted me to put up an altar, and I'm learning about you. And so I want to go back to my roots. I want to go back to my culture, and I want to go back and I want to know the things that the people back in those days knew, the reason why God loved them so much, because God said our ancestors was the apple of his eye. And I said, well, I'm the apple of his eye as well, because I came from that line, okay? And so I was at the altar every day, and I would go to social media from time to time, and I would hear stuff, and then a lot of stuff on social media, you can't take anything literally. You can't. Some people are on there just for the views or whatever, and what they'll do is they'll go listen to other people say something, go steal their talking points, try to make their own videos. Oh, so you can't believe everything you see on there, okay? You have to have discernment when you're on social media. And so that's what I did. I prayed for discernment, and I continued to just listen to my inner voice. And it would tell me, like, step by step, kind of not all at once, over a period of time, maybe a day, a week, or whatever go by, and then I have a real strong urge to do something else, with the altar. So then I laid down one day and I had a dream about a cousin of mine. Last time I saw this cousin, I was about 10 years old. I'm close to 100 now, but I was about 10 years old, And he had come to town. He came from the South, from Alabama. And he was an older guy. He was grown. I was a kid. He was grown. I think he was in his 30s or 40s at that time. And it was my birthday. And he said, "It's your birthday?" He says, they called him Junior. He said, "What? You ain't doing nothing for your birthday?" I said, "No." So the next thing I know, he left. He came back with a birthday cake, balloons. This man was an angel. This man was an angel. Balloons. Went outside, told all the kids in the neighborhood, "Come on, it's a birthday party. Come on, it's a birthday party." So then I had a birthday party. I had my first birthday party, actually. I had my first birthday party. And so one day I dreamed about him during my spiritual journey. Okay, I dreamed about him. I dreamed that I was in church. Now I wasn't in church anymore now. At this particular time, I had left the church. It had been about 10 years or close to 10 years. I had left the church. And I dreamed that I was at church and I was sitting on the pew, and my cousin that gave me that birthday party, he came and sat on the pew beside me. This man was he was just very cheerful and happy. And if you wasn't happy when he came in the room, you was happy and laughing and stuff when he left out. He was that kind of guy. And he sat on the pew and he looked at me, he smiled and everything at me. And I woke up and I said, "Oh my God." I said, "That's my ancestors." Because when I had started my altar, when I had, was getting my altar set up, I said, "I don't know nobody. I'm the black sheep of the family. I don't know nobody. I ain't got no ancestors and stuff like that." And so to me, that was my cue to, when I go to the altar, to pray to him and other ancestors that's unknown. Okay. And so I did that. And then I called his family in Alabama. And because it had been such a long time, and I asked the family, how did he look, what he looked like. They described him. And the way they described him, he was the man that was sitting beside me in my dream on the pew at church. I said, "Wow." And so then I just continued praying for my ancestors, known and unknown. He was one of them. And my uncle preacher, he was my favorite person in the world. So he was one of my ancestors. And the ones that was unknown. And so then I began to, I had done a lot of study already, a lot of studies and stuff like that. And I knew who was linked to my people from my studies. Okay. So I prayed to those people, which were Bible characters. And I prayed to those people that from what I'm learning, you and my ancestors, in which you come and be a part of my spiritual team. I prayed. I mean, now time is going by, some months had gone by and all that kind of stuff. And I still notice every time I put flowers on the altar, my choice of flowers was roses. And I will put the roses on the altar. And sometimes I will buy an extra bouquet of roses. And I would take that extra one and I put it on the kitchen counter. And I'll put the other one on the altar. And I'm telling you, within 2 or 3 days, the ones that was on the kitchen counter, no matter how I changed the water and, put the flour food and stuff in there for it to, keep it alive, 2 or 3 days, the one on the counter would die. But the one on the altar, roses now, y'all, would last a week, close to 2 weeks. And so then I realized then that my altar was alive. It had life. And that's why the flowers wasn't dying. And that's why every time I went to the altar, no matter how bad I felt, when I left my altar, I felt encouraged. I felt energetic. I felt like doing more and just doing more to please my spiritual team, which includes the Godhead and my ancestors at this point. So then when the weather got really nice outside, I would go outside. I had built for myself. I built me a fire pit outside in my backyard. And so I was, in the summertime, and when the weather wasn't bad, I was outside at my fire pit. So every day in the summertime, I'll cook my dinner, take it outside, listen to my music outside by the fire pit, and I would, study and stuff. Instead of coming to my sacred place in the house, I would study out by the fire pit. And seemed like things started opening up to me. And then I was watching this one guy on, this guy was on YouTube. What was his name? Brother Yusef. Brother Yusef was on social media, and he was saying he said when you begin to elevate, into your spiritual journey, he said you could call things into existence and they'll come. He said he said you could tell a cloud to move and the cloud would move. Listen to this, y'all. Hold on 1 minute. Okay, sorry about that. So then I hurried outside. I went outside, y'all. Summer day, beautiful day. The skies was blue. Clouds was white. Clouds was everywhere. Sun was out there. And I looked up in the sky and I said, the cloud had covered the sun. It covered the sun. And I said to the cloud, I said, I want move because I would like to feel the rays of the sunshine on my body, on my skin. And so I said to the clouds, I just want you to move so I could get some sunshine. Okay? Guess what happened? The cloud moved immediately. And now the sun was beaming down on me. And it was beaming down on me in a way that, felt like my skin was just drinking the rays of the sun. It was just drinking. It was on a hot day. It was hot. And so I just stood out there with my hands up. Some of my neighbors came out and they said, "Oh, you getting some sunshine?" Yes. And so I just stood there with my hands up. I know these people thought might have been a little crazy or something, but I got to the point where I started doing that every day, so they got used to it anyway. So I was out there, and so I did that. So that happened. And I was like, oh my God. Now, my spiritual journey was getting very, very exciting. So that made me study more. It made me meditate more. It made me go to the altar more, to pray more to my Godhead and my ancestors. And now outside was my best place because I wanted to call people and tell people, hey, I looked up in the sky and I told the cloud to move and the cloud moved. No, I couldn't say that. People think you're crazy and stuff, right? So I didn't have nobody to tell, but I was so excited about it. So the next day or so, I went out there. There was the bees had built a bee, a beehive. It was in the opening up in my porch, and they had built it up there. And so there was a lot of bees out there. I don't have flies, but I had the bees because of that. And I went out in the yard, and my inner self, now I'm in touch with my inner man. I'm in touch with that now. I said, lay on the ground. Y'all, I laid on the ground. Bees was everywhere. I laid on the ground. My head was on the ground. I ain't had no pillow or nothing. There was nothing between me and nature. I laid on the grass. And I saw bees. The bees was all above me, all around me. I saw other insects, little on the blades of grass and stuff like that. And I laid there, and not one bee came near me. Not one insect came near me, y'all. Not one. I laid there. I closed my eyes and drifted off into like a little sleep for a minute there. Not one insect touched my body. And I laid there on the ground with my legs crossed on the ground. Okay. So I was like, wow, this is getting very interesting. Then there was another time that a relative of mine had come over. And so me and my relative, we were sitting out by the fire pit. And so I got up, I had been talking to this relative. This was a very young person in my family, So over the months and stuff, I was telling him my experiences because, you could talk to younger people like that and they'll be more receptive to the things you're saying than the older people. Because the older people are the ones that, they all programmed and burnt out by the system. And whatever you say, they're going to twist it and to keep you in bondage. They like the overseers on the slave plantations and stuff. Whatever the pastor, whoever told them, if you were going outside of that, they're going to stop you and shut you down and, oh, you doing wrong. Then they're going to find scripture to try to back up that you doing wrong. But anyway, so this was a young person. And I said, I told him about everything I just told you all about how, the insects didn't bother me when I was laying out there. I told the cloud to move and the cloud moved. I said, now watch this. I told him, I said, watch this. So him and I was sitting there. And, we had dinner. I usually have, like once a week, I'll have wine with my dinner. So, him and I was having dinner and I'll having, a little wine with the dinner. I said, watch this. Now, the moon rises in the east and then it goes down in the west. And so I looked up in the sky. The moon was at the front of my house, but it was in the east. My house faces north. And so it was in the east, okay? And so I turned around and I said to the moon, I said, come over here and join us. I said, come between these trees right here, because in my backyard, it's 2 trees side by side, big trees, like 80 feet tall or something like that. But between them is a space, a breach or whatever between them. And I told the moon, I said, would you come right here between the trees to be with us? Now, I tell you no lie. If he was here today, he could tell you that he saw it too. So after I said that, him and I sat there and talked, like I said, he was a young guy and, he was telling me stuff about his world. And, I was telling him stuff about my new world, which was my spiritual journey that I had taken, I had, pursued, I was on. And, 10, no more than 15 minutes, the moon was between those 2 trees. I tell you no lie. It was between those 2 trees, y'all. And so what happens is when the moon rises in the east, there's a certain period of time or whatever that it'll move until it get to the west. That moon stayed there for a while. That moon stayed there. And him and I, praise God, and he was like, wow. And I was like, wow. And I was so happy because now God had showed me, let somebody else see some of the stuff that I couldn't say because I didn't want people to think I was going crazy. Okay, so that happened. So now I was to the point where, oh my man, this was getting very interesting. And now this was during the period where those flowers that I had put on my altar, that had lasted for 3 months, they were still on the altar. They were still on the altar. I just kept changing the water, and the flowers were still alive. So a few days later, I went back. I was always going outside, but a few days later, I'm not going to say something happened every time I went outside. That wouldn't be the truth. So a few days later, I went back outside, and I sat in the grass. This was during the daytime, because a lot of times when I lit my fire pit, it was, dawn. It was getting dark and stuff, And I sat in the grass. So now I am experimenting with my newfound power, y'all. And I sat in the grass, and the wind was blowing. The trees was, swaying in the, the leaves of the trees was swaying in the with the wind, And I looked up at between the trees, and I told the wind, I said, stop blowing. I just want you to stop blowing. The wind stopped blowing. Wasn't no wind. Wasn't no more wind, y'all. The wind stopped blowing. Y'all hear me? And then I said, okay, go ahead and blow again. The wind started blowing. I jumped up off of that ground. I went in the house, because I don't, my neighbors, they, I guess I think they do. They might think I'm a weirdo, okay? I don't want to be out there shouting and going on. So I ran in the house to my altar, and I said, oh my God, what have I gotten into? So my point is this right here, y'all. I was learning that everything that I needed was already in me. I didn't have to go ask nobody. I didn't have to go get high. I didn't have to get on drugs to feel better. Everything I needed was inside of me, and it was coming out, y'all. It was coming out. Oh my God, it was coming out. And then certain things that was happening, situations in my life, I began to pray and meditate on it. Situations would get better. And I tried the cloud again one day. And I said, I looked up in the sky, and this was on a winter day. It was cloudy, a little bit of sunlight or sun over whatever, I saw the sun there a little bit. And I told the cloud to move so I could see the whole sun. The cloud didn't move. The cloud didn't move. I said it again. I demand that the cloud move so I get full view of the sun. The cloud didn't move. So a day went by, 2 days went by, and then one day my doorbell rang. My back doorbell rang. Ding dong, ding dong. I went to the door, and guess what, y'all? Cloud was on my porch. That was the one that I had asked to move, and it didn't move. I guess it was transitioning or whatever. But the cloud was on my porch. But I couldn't see the cloud. I couldn't see the cloud, y'all, with my naked eye. When the doorbell rang, and I looked on my phone to see who was ringing my bell, big old white cloud was on my porch. So I ran to the porch, and I opened the door. And when I opened the door, I couldn't see it, but I had the phone in my hand, and the cloud was there, and it was throbbing. It was throbbing. It was moving. It was like it had life. It was like it had life, and it was it was a cloud, and it was seemed like a light or something was in it. It was all lit up on my porch, and I said, "Oh my God!" Okay, so that happened like in the morning, probably about 10 or something like that, late morning, and so all day I kept my phone nearby so I could watch the activity of that cloud that was on my porch. that cloud stayed on my porch all day. When the night came, I couldn't see the cloud anymore. But when the next day came, the cloud was still on my porch, vibrating, vibrating. It was on the porch for maybe 3, maybe 4 days. But before it left, it rang the doorbell again. Ding dong. Now, let me tell you something. My cameras around my house, they only work by motion. They only work by motion. And this thing was throbbing. So I got up enough nerve. I said, I got to tell somebody. I said, because you know what? I know I ain't, I already know I went crazy. I was just trying to help somebody to come with me and get their own spiritual journey so they can experience some of the stuff that I experienced. And so I called my sister and I said, it's a cloud. I prayed that a cloud would move in the sky, and now there's a cloud on my porch. And I sent her a picture of it. She said, "Oh, there ain't no cloud on your porch." She says, "That's a camera. What she say? It's a glitch." She said it's a glitch in the camera. Okay. So anyway, the cloud came back on my porch. From time to time, it still come, but that was over a year ago. The last time the cloud came on my porch, if my ex is watching, and if you talk to him, he'll tell you. We used to go shopping together all the time, go to dinner and do things together. And one day him and I was in a car. We was in his car and we was headed back to my house. And ding dong. And I said, "Wow." And I looked at my phone. He said, "Who at your back door?" The cloud was at my back door. And I told him about that had happened before. And so I showed it to him. He was like, "Wow." Okay, so as soon as we pulled up to my house, he got out of the car. I said, "You're not going to see it with your naked eye." But he got out of the car and ran to the backyard to see the cloud. He couldn't see it. But when he came back to my phone, it was on my phone. Throbbing. So now I'm saying, wow, this is teaching me something. And then birds and animals. I have a lot of deers and stuff in my neighborhood. They be all over the neighborhood, and it be raccoons at night, but I don't want to see no raccoons. I don't want to see them. Rodents make my skin crawl. Okay, but anyway, so birds, all these birds and stuff was flying all through my backyard. Every time I went out there, white butterflies, and you know what I realized? So now this was my inner man, my inner spirit teaching me things about nature. Okay, that made me realize that everything is a sign. And I thought about the scripture that all things work together for good, some kind of good. So I began to look up what white butterflies mean and yellow butterflies, and some butterflies mean that somebody, one of your love people, what you call your family love members, have transitioned and all that kind of stuff. All these butterflies and stuff. So I would get up in the morning, come down. Sometimes I would fix breakfast. Sometimes I wouldn't fix no breakfast because, I go ahead and fast and go out there and pray and stuff. When you fast, you see better results, and because you fast and you giving up a meal, and you're putting the things of God first, and so things manifest, or I'm trying to use another word other than manifest. Things come into fruition quicker. So I went outside. Birds. I took a picture of this. Birds would come all around me, and the birds would be like maybe 3 feet, 2 feet, 1 feet away from me. And it was a couple times I stumped my feet to see if he would leave. See if the birds would not leave. And I was not feeding them. I was not feeding the birds. I was not feeding them. Every time I would come outside, the birds would be sitting around my fire pit, because I had a table in my chair that I sit in right in front of the fire pit. And the birds would already be out there. They would not get on my table either or my chair. And so the birds was out there. And so then, every day I get up and it had gotten to the point where it wasn't a lot of birds, it wasn't a lot, a whole lot, maybe 5 or 6 birds, But then it was this one little bird. I don't know what the name of this bird. His belly was orange. Somebody told me that's a yellow belly sapsucker, but the belly was orange. It looked like it was orange to me, like a burnt orange. And every time I opened my door, y'all, that little bird was sitting out there waiting for me to come out there and sit down. And he would come like within a foot of where I was sitting, and he would stay the whole duration. I didn't give him nothing to eat. He'll stay the whole duration. Get down, put his little feet, get down on his little belly and just be comfortable. And I said, oh my God, look at this. Wow. And so then the next thing that was, because there's a whole lot of stuff, over the days and stuff, that was reminding me of how I am connected to nature. And this is what this all means to me. It was nature showing me how I was connected. And then I realized, okay, I'm connected to nature, and I'm also connected to the universe, y'all. Isn't that awesome? I'm connected, y'all. And you are too. But you gotta put that effort in. You gotta put that effort in. I had gone through it's called the Dark Night of the Soul. That was one of the very first things that happened to me when I decided that I wanted to dig deeper into who I am and be a better version of myself, okay? And so what that means is that's it's characteristic of going into you go deeply into yourself. It's called deep turmoil into yourself. And I did that. And I thought about all the things that I did that God might not have liked. Now I never was a person that did a whole lot of bad things, but mine was thoughts. If you did me wrong, honey, I'm thinking about killing you, and I want to kill you, and I want to do it. And all those thoughts came up, and I rebuked them, and I apologized to God. If it was anybody that I needed to apologize to, I would go apologize to that person. But I always made it my business not to hurt people, so I never had to go apologize to people. Which the same people would never apologize to me. In fact, don't nobody apologize. Nobody apologized. But anyway, so that happened, and that was before everything that I just said there. I went deep into myself, and it's like I cleansed myself. It's like I purified myself, and I said to myself, I said, Most High God, I say the things that's in me that's not like you, move them. Don't let me have an urge for them. I even asked to get rid of the urge of sex. Because I didn't have nobody, and I didn't want nobody, because I didn't want anyone to be here to interrupt the experience I was having on my spiritual journey. Because when people come, y'all, things change. People come, they bring all these spirits and everything. If you got someone and they're into homosexuality or whatever, and you don't know, you know it because that spirit is on them. If it's a person that's into a lot of different sexual partners and stuff, that too, because people come with spirits. And it was for that reason I would go like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years at a time. I don't have nobody, no sex, don't want it, ain't thinking about it, don't desire it. Because every time I would get into a relationship, it's like I got to go back and start over. Relationships broke my flow. So that's how I knew I was really deep into my spiritual journey. I denied myself of sex. I denied myself of people being around me. Now, it wasn't that I couldn't get with somebody, okay? That wasn't the problem. The problem was getting with people, and they the wrong people that need to be in your life. And so it's now you got to cleanse yourself of all of their impurities. You got to cleanse your house of it. Because when they came in thinking you didn't know what they was doing, they brought all that stuff right in the house. And if you're a spiritual person, you can feel certain things. You can feel it. Okay, so I'm gonna move on. I'm gonna end this video here. Not soon. The last thing that happened, and it's not really the last thing, but it's the last big thing. My brothers had a what I consider a wrongful death. Okay, that's what I consider. It was a wrongful death. And so I had to do my brother's funeral. And after I did his funeral, the day that I buried my brother, I came home, and I sat out in the backyard with him, and I used to sit when he come over to my house. We sit in the backyard by the pit, and we used to talk. And I sat out there, and of course I cried and talked to God, and asked God if things could have been any different. Did it have to turn out that way or whatever? I tell you no lie. Now I was sitting like in the middle of the yard by the fire pit. Okay, so it got dark. It had gotten dark at night. It might have been about maybe 10 o'clock at night or whatever. So I got up from the I was gonna say pool pit. I got up from the fire pit, and I went and said, I have two wings on my step. The wings with this what is it called? The sandstone flat area where you could sit on it. I sat there, and then I looked up at the trees. Like I said, I got two trees that's facing me in my backyard. I looked up at the tree that was over my garage. Blue lights, y'all. Orbs. Blue lights. These lights was the size of light bulbs. And they was all up at the top of the tree. At the very top of the tree. Not the middle, not the bottom. This tree is about 80 feet tall. At least 80 feet tall. And the lights was up there. And I said, oh my God, the lights was up there. So I took a picture of it. Got on the phone, sent it to my Christian sister, and oh no, that ain't because he died or what they call it. What did I just call him? No, that's not because of him. That's just I don't know what that is, but that's not what that is. And then I called my nephew. And I showed him while he was on the phone. And he was like, wow. And then I called my brother. And my brother came with my young cousin. And they all saw the orbs on the tree. So I'm up there. And they stayed out there the whole summer. They stayed out there the whole summer. I said to the orbs on the tree, I said, if you are generating that light from the transition of my brother, I want you to stay. I don't want you to leave. I said, I want you to stay. As a reminder from him to me. Stayed out there. So my ex, him and I was out there one day. I had just met him, and the orbs was on the tree. And I told him, my brother died, and the day that I put my brother in the ground, that's the day that the orbs came on the tree. So I got online to see what it meant when you see blue orbs in the tree. And guess what it said? I got on YouTube, Google. It said when you see blue orbs in the tree, after the death of a loved one, that is your loved one showing you that he have transitioned, and he had a smooth transition to the other side. So now me and my ex was sitting out there, and I told him that. Of course, he thought I was crazy. He looked at me like I was crazy. And he says, that's not got nothing to do with your brother. He said, I'm sorry to say, but that don't have nothing to do with your brother. He said, you see that little lamp? It was a lamp in my neighbor's window upstairs on the second floor. Now keep in mind, y'all, this tree is about 80 foot tall, and all the orbs is about between 8 and 9, 10 of them at the top of the tree. This was a 2-story house. The 2-story house is not 80 feet tall. So if the little lamp that was in the window, which had blue lights on it, if it would have been shining on the tree, y'all, the reflection of those lights would have been like in the middle of the tree. It wouldn't have been all the way up at the top of the doggone tree. So he said, no, I'm sorry. Darn, baby, that's what it is. It ain't, that's what it is. So I said, he said, go over there and when you see your neighbor, tell him to turn off the lamps and watch the lights go off. He said, I guarantee you the lights gonna go off. I said, no, I'm not gonna tell him to turn off the lights. I ain't gonna do that. I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. And I'm gonna end this video after this. I said, I'm gonna tell you what I'll do. I will, I said, I'm gonna talk to my brother who has already transitioned. I said, because that's what I want to believe, okay? And I'm gonna tell him to turn them lights off, the orbs. If it's him, turn them off. So I did that. A day went by, the lights didn't go off. 2 days went by, the lights didn't go off. 3 days went by, the lights did not go off. I came out there on the 4th day and the lights was off. I tell you no lie. I tell you no lie. Don't shoot. I tell you no lie. The lights was off. So then my ex came back out. He he was all looking and everything, and he didn't know what to say at that point. It was nothing to say, See, the earth and me, we're more spiritual than physical. Physical is just what you can see. You can see me, you can see the trees, you can see the grass, you can see the flowers. But it's more spiritual things going on around us that we can't see. Okay, so anyway, so now the lights was off. And I said, I went out there and I said, I just wanted to, told my brother thank you. And I said, I know the lights was coming from you. I said, could you turn the lights back on? I said, because I really want them lights on, because I want to remember you. I want those lights on. I wouldn't mind having the lights on for the rest of my life. If you can do that for me, that's fine with me. I mean, if you can't, you can't. But okay, so about 3 days or more went by. And guess what, y'all? The lights came back on. Okay, so my ex didn't, he couldn't explain it. He couldn't explain it. But, some people don't like to be wrong about stuff. So they say, well, I guarantee it is from the lamp. Okay, well, if it's from the lamp in the window, how come when the light went off for 3 days, the lamp was still on and there was no reflection? Okay, we ain't gonna get into all that. But anyway, I am telling you all of this because this has been all a part of my spiritual journey. I've had a very rich spiritual journey. And there is no 2 spiritual journeys that are exactly the same. They're all personal. Okay? One of the other things that I had noticed about my spiritual journey, and it was one of the, it was right up there with the dark night of the soul, okay? My intuition got real sharp, real sharp, real sharp, real sharp, real sharp. Your intuition get really sharp. And that's one of the signs that that you need to be on your spiritual journey. And I didn't have a lot of doubt. I didn't have a lot of doubt, very minimal doubt. And then one day, the spirit, my spiritual team, excuse me, had poured into me, because I was just, I study. I try to learn something every day. I try to learn at least one thing a day. If you learn one thing a day, you'll know at least 30 things in a month. So I try to learn at least one new thing a day. So I had heard about the universal ether, and I have heard that the universal ether was a thing that they really didn't know a whole lot about. And so I went into myself, and I began to ask myself, and I began to ask my spiritual team, Most High God and my spiritual team, about the universal ether that's up in the universe, y'all. It was poured into my spirit as a spiritual download, y'all, that the universal ether is our sixth sense. It's our sixth sense, y'all. So we have five senses: hearing, seeing, tasting, touching, and what's the other one? I can remember all five of them. Touching and smelling, okay? So those are your earthly five senses. Those are given to you so that you can survive on the earth, okay? And do the things you need, like eat and smell and that kind of stuff here. But once you go into your spiritual journey, listen to me, y'all. When you go into your spiritual journey, my spiritual team had poured into me that you have a sixth sense. It's called the ether. And that is your magical sense of, what's it called? It's your magical sense of, what's it called? Of sensory perception. Of sensory perception. We got six senses, but you have to put the work in, and you have to actually go above the earth to get that sixth one. And it's magical. It has always been out there. Now, I'm just telling you my experience. I'm telling you about my spiritual downloads. I don't want people to come on here telling me, talking all stupid and stuff to me, like I see them doing on other videos and stuff like that. So everything I'm telling you is my experience. And so I've said all of that to say this right here. We all have a unique and personal experience. Spiritual journey. Our experiences in life are all different. None of them are the same exactly, okay? We'll have stuff that's similar to people, and I think God does it that way so that we can help each other. But your spiritual journey will be different from my spiritual journey. So I'm on here, and I'm sharing my spiritual journey. And a lot of what I'm sharing with you was after I put up my altar. So I'm suggesting to you all, study your history, go back to your biblical roots, go back to your ancestral roots, and read and learn about those things the way that I did. That was in your culture, as part of your tradition, probably things you did every day, to make you the people, the apple of God's eyes. And then you try them things for yourself. And I would like for you to make a video one day and tell me how yours were. Okay? Your experience. I wouldn't take nothing for this. I wouldn't take nothing for this. And I want to say this too before I get off of here. I'm an older person, and I'm not young. Okay? So as we get older, I hear a lot of people complaining about their sexual their sexuality is not the same. They say the women is not the way they used to be, and the men are not the way they used to be. The men complain the most about the women not being the way they used to be, but the truth is they're not what they used to be either, okay? So, but this is what I learned. When you get older and your sexual parts are not working the way they used to, or you think they're not working the way they used to, because if everything that I said can be a reality for me, and then it's something you can do about that too if you go into yourself. Okay, but let me finish. So this is my opinion now, y'all. When you get to be a older person, say for instance you're a woman, you're out of your childbearing years and that kind of stuff, and you're a man, and you can still have children, but your sperm is not the same, and your erection is not the same. When that happens, to me, that's an indication that you have to go on to another level of things. Now, I read something where it says, every time now I don't know if they withdrew. This was actually I guess it was a hypothesis or whatever, scientific hypothesis. I don't know if they withdrew it or whatever or not. But it said every time that you would ejaculate, I think it was for the men and the women. So every time you would reach your climax, you lose fluid off your brain. Okay, now y'all, that might be why some of us act the way we act. But that's another thing you need to look up and see if it's still so. Because if it's something that it was a scientific hypothesis or whatever, and they withdrew it, it still should be in the system that it became obsolete. Okay, but I heard that. I don't know how true that is, but I know this right here. Your sexual energy is your creative energy. If you're not having sex all the time and releasing your energy into other people, then you will have a creative energy that you could use to create things, businesses, social media channels, because that's your creative energy. So when you just constantly jerking it out and ejaculating or whatever and getting it out, and then a lot of people I know that do that, they be jealous hearted people. They be people that's kind of lost, and they get mad at somebody else from knowing more than them and doing more than them. But according to that particular theory, you're emptying your energy out in people every time you get a little tickle, if you know what I mean. You're emptying yourself out. So, what I advise you try not to do that, and see if you expand or you grow in creativity, in spirituality, in spiritual energy. Because I know myself, I go long periods of time because it ain't nobody out here that, ain't nobody out here. And yes, I'm very creative. A lot of times I could just be walking through the house and I got ideas that'll make millions of dollars. I don't say it because you know what they do? When they know you got good ideas, they want to do things to you and take it from you, especially if you didn't put it all out there. I realize it ain't even good to put it out there. But my point is, you are releasing your creative energy into people. You're homosexual, you listening to people, but the creative energy that God has given you to do His will, you releasing it into people, like, in butt sex with homosexuality and women that probably don't even deserve your precious energy, and men that don't deserve your energy. It's just a setback. So that's another thing that you all need to use as one of the experiences or experiments of your spiritual journey, your sexual energy. your sexual energy. Yep. I'm not saying that everybody get a certain age and then sexually they're no good. I'm not saying that. That is not the truth. I never said that, okay? I'm just telling you some of the things I learned. And I learned that when I do not use and give away that energy, I am more spiritually inclined. I'm more intellectual. Seem like ideals and solutions just flow right to me. But I notice when I get in relationships, all that stuff come to a standstill. All that stuff come to a standstill. And I'm to the point in my life, y'all, where I don't want no more relationships. I don't want no more. Too much trouble. I don't want it. Okay, so I'm gonna end this video, y'all. And what I would like for you to do is, if this video resonated with you, I'd like for you all to subscribe, give a thumbs up, and ring the bell for more videos, especially for the second part of this video, okay? For the second part of this video, I would like for you all to also put a 1 in the chat. Let me see how many ones I can get in the chat to see how many people's interested in me doing a second part of this video, which will tell you how to set up your altar and become the spiritual magnet that you was born to be. Again, thank you for tuning in to Biblical Hot Topics.